Yeah.
Stream is live. Okay, cool. Well, yeah. I mean, I think first off, it's such a pleasure to be here. I think one of the best parts about my job and just working at the foundation in general is that I get to play a really, really small part in a lot of founders' journeys, and I think the founder journey is something that is like, to be revered. I think that is something that is really special, and I firsthand understand how daunting and scary that can be, and also how rewarding it can be. So for everyone who is here, I applaud you, and I think that I'm really happy that you're on this journey, and I wish you the most success. And we're going to do everything in our power to ensure that you have some form of success, even if it's in a really small way. I give a little bit of an introduction to myself. There's some context. I have worked in consumer for more than a decade. I started my career working in consumer products at Apple, so I worked on all these consumer products like Apple News, stocks, books, weather, and I really got a good idea of what it means for people to be obsessed with craft, for people to really value design, value that user experience and that delightful experience that you have when you use products, an Apple product or any other product of that caliber. It was really great. I didn't love the big tech aspect of it, and I felt a calling that I'm sure so many of you are feeling, where I wanted to go out and start my own thing. So I left and started a consumer fintech platform where you could copy trade other people. So at the time, this was when GameStop and AMC were behaving like meme coins, and they were having these crazy volatile price actions, and people were commenting on the movement of these things on Reddit. And I thought it was crazy that people were moving 5 or 6 figures worth of size into these meme stocks just based off what like someone on Reddit would comment. So you built a platform where you could connect any brokerage, and you could create a strategy, which is kind of like a basket of stocks or an ETF, and people could copy trade you. And we launched by using the Nancy Pelosi portfolio tracker, which was literally just a Twitter account that we grew to like 500,000 followers in 3 months. It's Wall Street who was doing all the copywriting for us. And we used that as a marketing service to launch the product. We did over $100 million volume. We had over 20,000 users in 48 hours. It was crazy. People really wanted to copy this like famous senator who's making a ton of money investing in stocks. And yeah, from there, we ended up having technical obstacles related to brokerages. So we decided to start building in crypto, and that's really where my journey first began. Built a copy trading app for NFTs on Ethereum. Everything was really congested, slow there. So traction wasn't as great as we saw on traditional rails, but I became obsessed with crypto at that point. And from there, continued to build out different consumer mobile apps. Most recently worked at Believe. For those of you who aren't familiar with Believe, it was a crazy roller coaster of an experience. So it's a meme coin launchpad, kind of like except we were focused on tokenizing real startups, artists, or projects. So not just memes for meme's sake, but really trying to basically bring real world companies. Majority of my work there was just GTM, tokenomics, with the product. Really just like a lot of what I do now to be as beneficial as much as I can. So that's a quick nutshell about me. I wanted to go over some like high level ideas or concepts that have been really interesting to me throughout this cycle and sort of where we're headed. So I think that like we've gone through a few cycles that I would aspirational, right? Like I think for a long time we thought Web3 and like social use cases were going to like replace Instagram, like completely replace this financial. And I think that those aspirations are actually chance of that happening to some degree. But I think that what happened, most recently is I think and consensus on the fact that Solana and blockchain in general are really technical advanced. And I think that grounding is actually really allows you to see things with your eye. What I mean by that is like accept that as like the foundation of what's possible in terms of building this ecosystem. I think that crypto's having like a really, really interesting moment. So just to go through, a few things that I think are really interesting. AI agents have had a little over a year and a half, various different use cases. We're still really nascent in how agents will interact with the crypto ecosystem as a whole. So there's a whole swath of categories that AI agents become really prominent in the future. We're starting to see early signs of DeFi. We're starting to see a lot of projects in the crypto industry that are kind of similar to like DeFi summer. The vibes are there, the nostalgia is there, and we have vastly more liquidity and concentration. So these experiments are actually faring better than their predecessors. I think this is the one that is the most exciting. More and more real world assets are moving on chain and with like very real volume. You're seeing this on one end of the spectrum in terms of like tokenized stocks, which I think are, that's inevitable. I think that makes a lot of sense. And on sort of like the other side, you're seeing even things like energy or soil or, like real estate is coming on chain. And I think that that's like a very interesting area to build in as well. And then I really only have like two other points. Like one, I think consumer apps are starting to go mainstream. You're seeing a lot of crypto consumer apps that are hitting sort of these inflection points, and people are, generally a little bit more savvy when it comes to how this technology and ecosystem can work. And also the tools and, software experiences that are available for developers are like so much better now that you can actually build like really good consumer grade products without having to sacrifice anything, which is a massive unlock. And then finally, I think neobanks are getting just like so close to having like a really good UI UX. And if you sort of combine neobanks with all of the previous things that I talked about, like you'll start to have these super apps that will be far superior to traditional financial products that are available to people. And I would even argue that even if you're not necessarily like building a neobank per se, if you're just doing something that is related to people moving money in any form, you can probably also build a neobank with like not that much effort and start to take advantage of yield generation and things like that. So those are a few of the areas that I'm really excited about. And I think that the sort of like ideal state, like probably 10 years in the future, is I think that like all successful consumer apps will probably end up with like a version of their own stable coin or their own on-off ramp. Like I think these things will eventually be like completely full stack. We're not there yet, but we're in the early innings, and I think it's like the best time to build. So I think that we can take this in any way, shape, or form that we want. I'm happy to field questions or provide feedback on any projects that people might be working on. But those are some of the things that I'm finding really interesting. Maybe we can go from there.
Okay, perfect. Okay, can you hear me, Taylor? Just testing.
Hear you, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Because when you talk, we are muting here, so it doesn't give us like the back back noise.
Yeah.
All right. So first of all, thank you again for coming here. Shimos, está bem na frente da câmera. There we go. Thank you very much for coming here and spending this time with us. We do have a room here full of builders, maybe 20-ish people, 30-ish people here. Each of them are basically building something different. There are many that are consumer app focused, right? You gave a very good overview of your thoughts and like the general market, but I'll try to shoot some more specific questions. If you can or cannot answer, just let us know. That's fine. Just to start with something a little bit spicy. What you said about something you're excited, right? 3 topics that you're excited to see. What are stuff that you don't want to see, that is already tired or that you're already bearish on it?
It's a good question. Let's see. I think that okay. So I guess I'll say this. Like, I think that products that just try and build copycats of like Web 2 products or platforms that already work, and they just put a crypto spin on it that doesn't actually unlock any of those attributes that I was describing earlier, like any of those advantages that this ecosystem has. I think that like those are relatively low effort and you might have gotten away with that back in like 2021 or 2022, but I don't think just like putting lipstick on a pig and just saying like you're using these rails when nothing like fundamentally changes about the product. I don't think that's the wave. So as an example, if you were to just like rebuild Instagram or something today, or like Twitter, and you're just basically like copying the data on chain, like I don't think that is really an innovation or something that can be groundbreaking or successful. So I would say that that's sort of like the overarching theme of a lot of these things. First off, I think a really easy one to tap into, but I'll like say that these next two there's a little bit of a double-edged sword to them. I think a lot of people like to reach for gaming as an example of something that was like a failed experiment in crypto. And I guess I think there are two sides to this coin. I think that, again, if you take that sort of route of like ignoring the quality of the game, ignoring the quality of the product, like you don't care about the user experience, whoever is playing it, and you're just like, this is a game with like on-chain components. Again, I think that falls really squarely into that first category that I was talking about, where there's nothing like really innovative there. And unfortunately, I think we saw a lot of games like that had this like meteoric success, but people are tired of that now. And I think that like it really goes back to a fundamental belief about consumer products, which is like you have to start with the user. So this sort of leads into the other side of that coin, which is like, if you are able to build a game that is absolutely delightful, that people love to play and they really enjoy, I think that you can tap into crypto rails and the greater ecosystem at large in order to create a more enhanced experience. And if there's one thing that is really obvious to me, I think the biggest strength of crypto is its community. You see things that happen in this community that do not happen anywhere else, and they're truly mind-boggling. And if you're able to create a delightful game that also is able to harness all of those amazing attributes from the ecosystem, I think that you actually can have an advantage over like a traditional Web 2 game or similar. And finally, I would also say, again, with that sort of understanding that this ecosystem is tech for finance, you can create these different kinds of monetary incentives that are not possible to create in a Web 2 style game. But all of this is like fundamentally underscored with the fact that you need to start with the user, and you need to have a really good experience. So I would say like Web3 social or like gaming things, just by virtue of them having like Web3 tacked onto them, I don't think those products will tend to fare well. And I'm generally pretty bearish on stuff like that.
Okay, no, great, thank you. I think the best way to go from here, we don't want to take a lot of your time, and I know it's already 20 minutes in. Maybe open for some questions, and maybe even hear some of the builders, what they're building, and then you can be true with them and say, okay, this is a piece of, or no, that's a great product, you should, or give your honest feedback and your raw feedback.
Yeah, happy to. And this time is for everyone. So yeah, no need to feel rushed. I'm happy to be here.
O que você ia falar? Okay. All right. Gente, eu vou abrir então para perguntas e também para falar dos produtos. Que alguém tem uma pergunta e eu traduzo, ou se não...
Falou bastante sobre Web 2 para Web 3 no sistema, né? O meu token é exatamente isso. A pessoa poder ter um token que ela tenha propriedade, que ela possa usar não só naquela empresa, mas em todo o ecossistema. Então, é o token de fidelização social, que a pessoa vai ganhar pelo engajamento. Então, essa foi a adição que eu trouxe para a ferramenta, né?
Sim.
Por isso que fez sentido
utilizar o Web3.
Ele falou que é bem bearish nesse socials, né? Tipo, mas eu acho que a questão é explicar o que você estava falando.
Isso, exato. Perfeito.
A ferramenta funciona, existe.
E agora a live tá ok? A live tá ok? Tá tocando?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Taylor, just to test it out, can you hear me still?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, great, because I lost you in one computer, but the other one's running. All right.
Okay,
so the
great.
first question is actually, there's one builder here, he's building a loyalty platform. Nevertheless, it's not the one we are tired of seeing, right? And using NFTs for loyalty, etc. This guy, he had a loyalty platform for like 25 years on Web2, has plenty of clients and like restaurants and stuff like that. And he's using blockchain to create the loyalty token that, for example, let's say you go to this pizza place, right, or this pasta place, and then you get 100 tokens. Later on, you go to maybe a bar, and then you can exchange that 100 tokens to something in that bar. So he's making an interconnected economy between all the places that use his loyalty program, and that's his main use of blockchain. I can share with you his deck later. And he's asking, okay, if that's something okay in your opinion, in your vision, to like a real use of blockchain, or if he should reconsider his way.
It's a good question. I think that I think it's dependent on how valuable you can make that token for other people, right? Like, I think that one of the biggest positive attributes of building things on chain is that you enable a permissionless world where, people who might not even necessarily like want to come in and like buy pizza from a shop or something can participate in this sort of like financial ecosystem and potentially stand to benefit from it. So I guess I would say that like, a loyalty system that is just built, using NFTs or like that leverages on-chain data, just solely for the purpose of like leveraging on-chain data. I think that like, I think that's fine. But I think that like the more interesting use case is like when you enable other people, other participants to come in and like have some kind of participation, even if they're not necessarily the ones like going in and like buying the pizza. So I think that's one bit. I think the other bit is like, even if you don't want to have, participants like participating in this little ecosystem that you've built, I think a really good question is, what are the incentives for restaurants to come in, or, any other kind of vendor to come in and start participating in this kind of loyalty program? And I think that there are a lot of ways that you can be creative with that. Like generally a loyalty program, you have vendors or restaurants participate in that because it gives them some additional channel in terms of like unlocking either like new customers, or it increases retention for recurring customers, right? And so I think those are sort of like the most interesting questions to ask there. And, without like going into this a little bit more, I think it's hard for me to answer that. But like if you think about some of the most successful loyalty programs that exist out there, for existence, like Starbucks, right? I think Starbucks for a bit used NFTs under the hood in order to power their experience. And when you think about like if Starbucks were to open up that ecosystem so other people could like participate in like buying these NFTs or like points, and they could stand to like, capture some upside as like Starbucks grew its platform or something, like that feels like a really easy thing to do. Now, the hard part about that is like Starbucks has beat the boss at level 1. Like they've already got all the distribution and the brand power. So I think it's tough when you're literally starting from scratch, but those are, I think, without getting a little bit more information, and I'm happy to ask more questions, I think that's how I would sort of think about that in general.
No, great, thank you. Yeah, I'll share more details later on. And his niche is very like small restaurants, around like towns and stuff like that.
Cool.
Okay.
No, and then there's one other thing I would say, which is like, for stuff like that, I would look to a company called Kled, because they've done a really good job of integrating, basically empowering their users to want to participate in this sort of like upside using the company's token. So feel free to connect me afterwards. Happy to chat with the founder. And then I would say just generally look to Kled for stuff like that can be really powerful.
Thank you. All right. Okay.
Como precificar a interatividade? Qual o preço, o valor da interatividade?
Em qual sentido? Só porque...
Qual o valor que eu posso entregar ao usuário que me dá a interatividade para ele? Na verdade, qual o valor que eu posso passar para ele?
Para o usuário final, tipo... eu não entendi também. Valor monetário, você disse?
Valor monetário. Não sei o valor monetário, mas como que eu posso precificar, assim, por exemplo... eu tenho um app e eu pago uma recompensa para esse usuário. Como que eu posso precificar essa recompensa o usuário estando no meu app? Entende? Como que eu vou tabelar isso?
Quanto eu remunero um usuário da minha plataforma? Sabendo quanto ele te gera.
Sim.
Você tem que saber quanto ele te gera.
Quanto ele me gera. Eu não tenho assim dados de quanto ele me gera, mas como que eu posso precificar isso se eu não tenho esse dado?
Tá, estou pensando como traduzir mesmo.
As novidades que ele faz, por exemplo, que ele lançou, a época que ele trabalhou e tal, ele teve que tirar de alguma coisa, de algum dado, de alguma informação para precificar o produto que ele tem. É uma novidade. Entende?
Ok.
Bugou a cabeça?
Bugou. Eu acho que eu consigo perguntar mais ou menos, assim, para eu conseguir entender.
Eu acho que a pergunta é como estabelecer um preço para um usuário quando um produto não tem referência.
Está muito early stage.
Ok, early stage.
Okay,
Como
fine.
estabelecer por isso?
All right. We were debating how to ask this in English and how to translate the idea. All right, so this builder here, Rafael, he has an app that basically rewards people for charging their phones. You put your phone on the wall, so this is targeted right third world countries and stuff like that. You put your phone to charge, and then people who you want make an ad or a marketing campaign, they just make the announcements and run the ads on the app. So while you're charging your phone, you're seeing like an ad from Soulflare, just an example.
Mhm.
And his question is how he can pricify, right? And how like the amount that he could reward people, and because there's no benchmark for his product. He's based, or at least he thinks there isn't. So there's no, based on that there is no benchmark. How can you pricify, like, first, how much value are you giving to your customers, right? And second, how much am I able to pay my users back based on that?
So yeah, it's a really good question. Let's see. I think that, while there might not be a product in the current market that uses a similar kind of reward system, and so you can't price exactly, I think that you can look to some historical counterparts to get an idea of what that could look like. So, I mean, as like a crypto example, like earn.com, right, was basically this, where you would, watch something and then be rewarded with that, like protocols token or something in exchange for like learning more about it and how it worked. So I think that that's like a pretty similar comparison that you can draw. I think that, this advertising system is really going to come down to like a few things that are obviously like that very closely mirror traditional advertising systems. I actually don't know what the prices of these things are off the top of my head, but I'm sure, with like ChatGPT or Claude or something, you could ask basically how much Google pays on a viewer impression, on an impression basis for like AdSense ads or similar. You could even take it a step further and, it's like, okay, well, if you think that, your advertisement is worth more because you're able to have a little bit more selection or targeted distribution for, whoever is using this, then like, I think that's like another thing that you can consider. But really, like, I would start, like, if I were trying to solve this problem, I would start with, seeing what my clients, like the people who want to advertise, are willing to pay based off of, impressions or any other kind of data that I can provide to them that might be valuable. And then once I have like what they're willing to pay, I think it would work backwards from there and be like, okay, like, what I would experiment and try and figure out, like, what can I pay my users with a certain set of margin, and how much can I like decrease that while increasing scale? Yeah, I think it's a tough question. That's sort of how I would start, is like start with the side that is willing to give you money, and then work backwards from there to see how much margin you can really get out of it.
Okay, no, great. All right, there you go. They unmuted me. No, thank you. Yeah, that's great. And yeah, indeed, it's a tough question because it's very broad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I have a next one here. My question is, what barrier do you see today that crypto products should seek to overcome? What are your thoughts on crypto products that focus on social use? I think you already gave a brief example of social medias translating towards crypto, but like overall crypto products that has a real social use. So barriers and crypto products that focus on social use.
Okay, this is a really, really, really good question. And I like it a lot because these, like barriers and socials, I actually like play really interestingly well together. And what I mean by that is, like, if we go back to something that I said earlier in this, I think one of the biggest strengths of crypto is its community. And I think that there are things that happen in this community that do not happen anywhere else. And while, I'm not necessarily very bullish on like replacing an Instagram or a Twitter with just Web3 whales, I'm really, really bullish on apps that use social as a way to reduce barriers. So I think that, like, let me start with the barriers. I think that one of the hardest things to start, in order to participate in this ecosystem is, like, you have to learn like 10 different things without really understanding how all of the parts work together. And we're just now getting to a point where, the technology we've abstracted away a lot of the difficult parts of this. Like, for instance, Privy has like embedded wallets, right, in products. And like, No one has to worry about even the friction of like downloading Phantom or something and then going connecting, through Phantom is like a really daunting experience for people who've never, done anything in this ecosystem. So I think the technology has abstracted away a lot of those barriers, and like that should be really heavily used. If there's a company that is focused specifically on reducing friction or a barrier in some way, and they've devoted like all of their conscious time and attention to doing that, like you should definitely use them, because I think that it'll make your job a lot easier just because you don't have to like work on onboarding. So I think that's one bit. And then I think the other barriers are like, for better or for worse, right now, the experience to get started is a little fragmented. Like you have to download a wallet, you have to have some kind of on-ramp with an exchange. There's like KYC details. There's so many different chains that you can start on. Like people might not necessarily understand the nuance between all of the chains and like and what's possible in terms of like interactivity. Bridging is something that is like completely foreign. So I would say that, I think that the barriers is that you have to go to like 3 or 4 different places just to get started, and anything that you can do to make that experience simpler for your users, like you should do it. Like if there's some kind of like native in-app experience where they can on-ramp without having to like, leave and go somewhere else, I think that's really great. If there's embedded wallets, like I think that you should use that, and that's great. And I think this sort of segues into the next bit, which is like social is a really, really great way for reducing onboarding friction. And it's also a really great way to have user retention. So I'll take like one example of an app that I think does social really, really well. It's a trading terminal, and it's called FOMO. The way that social experiences work on FOMO is, you connect your Twitter, and then you're able to see basically all the people that you follow on Twitter who are also on FOMO. You can follow them immediately, and then you get a notification every time they enter or exit a trade. And you're then able to sort of like start deducing like, okay, I think this coin is cool because, this investor who's like really successful, or, and you can see they're like, you can verify if they are a positive P&L trader or not. And they're able, these traders are able to like write their thesis and like that, a trading terminal is like a very, very simple product, but that social infusion does a lot. Like it increases retention. It has a positive K factor, which means that people are like going to share it. FOMO actually incentivizes people to share their P&Ls, both gains and losses, by having people, there's like a referral program if people sign up using your code. So I'm super, super bullish on people or founders or projects who use social as a way to reduce onboarding friction. And I think that like, in the future, maybe in like 4 or 5 years, like everything will have some kind of social component to it, just because it's so powerful. Like I guess the final thing that I'd like end that with is like, everyone is kind of converging to like the same product. Like we're not there yet, but like eventually there will be some kind of like crypto super app where you have like stable coins, payments, perps, prediction markets, yield generation, like all in one place. That's kind of like, if you could just wave a magic wand and will that into existence, like that's kind of what everyone's going for. So that's sort of how I think about both onboarding friction and also social. Hopefully that answered your question.
All right. No, yeah, 100%. Good? Yep. And
da FOMO é muito doido, porque ao mesmo tempo que esse fator social é o que fez a FOMO ser a FOMO, foi esse mesmo fator social que deu tipo, um problema no começo do ano, quando os traders pararam de tradar lá porque estavam cansados de ser traqueados e estavam perdendo muito e falaram, não quero mais ninguém me veja tradando, e saíram da plataforma.
Mas isso
eu vi.
Isso é o mesmo problema, porque
Mas depois a gente debate isso. Vamos passar para a próxima, senão a gente não consegue. Hey, Taylor. All right. So we were just talking about FOMO that you bring up, and which is a great solution. But in the same time, in the beginning of the year, like those famous KOLs, they were like tired of people copy trading them, etc. Right, on their public wallets, and of course they were lying most of the time. So now they could verify their profits and losses in it, and it's very fun as well because a trading terminal is so simple as you mentioned. And in Solana, we already had 2 or more big cases, right? Like Axiom, for example, right? Was Photon, but Axiom was the YC Combinator company that reached $100 million the fastest, right? From all the YC, right? So we're talking about Uber, we are talking about everything we can imagine, and a trading terminal did it. So that's great. We have some questions on the chat. Just bring this one. question from Super Team Brazil, actually, somebody in the chat. But what niches will most grow on Solana in the next 3 years cycle? Please bring your perspective to Brazilian builders participating in the Frontier Hackathon. Okay, that's obvious, but what is the things that
let's see. What niche? What niches will grow most in the next 3 years? Okay, I think this is a pretty straightforward question. So I would say it's stable coins, payments, perps, 100%. Prediction markets, and then yield, like DeFi kind of things. The reason why I think that is because there is like a certain beauty in crypto where there's something for everyone. Like if you don't care about speculation and you're kind of just looking for utility, you have stable coins, you have payments, you have some form of like yield generation for idle capital. If you love gambling and speculating, like you have prediction markets, you have perps, you have like memes and trading terminals and all the info related to that. If you don't care about any of that, but you just care about ownership in some form, like you care about being able to access these assets that you might not otherwise be able to access, have tokenization, right? Like people in countries outside the United States are able to purchase United States equities on Solana just by virtue of being able to access something that's like completely permissionless. So I think that for whether you're building for like institutions or consumers or really anyone, I think that like the areas that will grow the most, like by far, and we're seeing this, and it feels really clear to me, are stable coins, payments, perps. I think are sort of like the top 3. And then outside of that, I think you have like prediction markets and all of their sort of variants, and then just general like DeFi yield kind of stuff.
Got it. No, thank you so much, Taylor. While we wait for the questions here, quick joke. When will Solana overcome Hyperliquid, right, on perps? What are the great things coming? And, okay. Do you have a question? Yes. Qual que é? Essa aqui? Essa aqui é Trust? Essa aqui já. E aqui, então, o que faz o produto cripto viralizar com a B2, é isso?
Quer ver as outras?
Não, essa aqui é muito boa. Essa última aqui é muito boa. Okay. All right, so we do have a kind of a broad but good question here. In your opinion, what are like the key factors that make a crypto product go viral, right, with Web2 or Web3, without depending on like a huge yield or like an airdrop or incentives, right? Because we are tired of seeing that, right? People go farm the airdrop and then everybody leaves. So what is the true thing here to bring and keep the users?
100%. I think this is a really good question because, I think that we've seen sort of that cycle of like, really big airdrops or some other form of just like very pure like financial incentivization in previous cycles. And I don't think that they work as well anymore. A lot of protocols are in fact like just choosing to go like a very different direction as we saw earlier today. I think that it's actually 2 things. We saw this, at Believe. I think Believe would was able to hit an exit velocity really quickly. I actually think it's a social component, which is why I'm so bullish on consumer crypto. But if you're able to build some kind of like social component or media on top of like any of these sort of any of these crypto products, you get these things that are like really, really, really compelling, that are able to attract in people who might not pay as much attention to crypto, or who are completely like brand new to crypto. And so, in Believe's case, I think that what was compelling about that from a narrative perspective is that no one had really like brought on like actual startups on chain before. Like I think that was something that was like really new, and it allowed people who normally wouldn't pay attention to crypto at all, like they saw all of these things happening like on their Twitter feed, like on their timeline. And I think that piqued a curiosity where it was able to sort of exit that kind of like crypto bubble and pierce into, a new market of entrants and participants. So yeah, I mean, I think being able to have some kind of like social component that is able to reach outside of the crypto bubble, I think is really, really valuable. And this can be like in really, really simple ways, right? Whether it's just discussing news or like sharing a thesis or allowing people to like copy trade you in some form, like those are all really, really compelling. And then the next bit that I would say, and you're kind of seeing this, I think that like Hyperliquid has done a really, really good job of this, is that I think the path to, something that's really viral is really like RWA enableization. So bringing on real world assets that and making those accessible in regions where people like can't access them right now. And an example of this is like tokenized stocks, non USD denominated stable coins, tokenized credit. Like I think that these have so much more room to grow. And the reason why they have so much more room to grow is because you start attracting like institutional capital, or you start attracting retail in places where, the Reg X is like just too encumbering for them to participate in these markets otherwise. So those are sort of the two things I would say. Like one, some way to like get greater attention, like pierce the crypto bubble and attract like net new participants or entrants in some way. Typically that's done in a social fashion. And then the next bit is like some form of like RWA access for people who might not otherwise have it.
Okay, awesome. Ele tem uma. All right. Okay, so quick question before this one. Do you still have time for 2 more questions?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. All right, let's do it. Yeah.
Minha pergunta é bem simples. Se ele estivesse nessa posição que estamos hoje, olhando para o mercado cripto hoje, olhando para a necessidade do mercado hoje, qual seria o problema que ele atacaria?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so if you were like in our position, right, in our fit here, as builders trying to launch something cool, and with your vision of the current market, the crypto market, so mostly a crypto native product, what problem would you tackle? Like you say, okay, this is the biggest pain point right now, I should try to do something in this area.
I think that's kind of hard for me to answer, just because I don't know the perspective or the background of whoever is asking this question. But I think I would frame it. I guess I'll take the opportunity and just say like, it doesn't really. I guess it doesn't really even really matter like what I think, because ultimately like the thing that you build that is going to be like really successful is going to require a lot of work and like obsession and fascination. And I think that you are the only one who's really capable of like finding out what that is for you. And like, I don't know, maybe this is a little bit more philosophical, but I think it's important to spend time to figure out what those like natively interesting things are for you, because if you don't have that inherent kind of like obsession surrounding it, like you're going to get destroyed by people who do. So I think maybe like an unsatisfying answer, but I think that's a very real one. And then, just as something that might actually be useful, I think from a very, very broad perspective, I think those categories that I was talking about earlier I think they all have like room to 10x on Solana especially. And I think you're seeing like really early variants of all these companies. Stable coins I think is like really obvious. Payments I think is really obvious. Perps, there are a few different companies that are trying to solve this on Solana, with some that are doing like really exceedingly well. Prediction markets, like obviously there are the really big heavy hitters like Kalshi and Polymarket, but we've even seen others that are like taking this in a even shorter like interval kind of way. Like Pumpcade is one that has gone a little bit more niche, and they're actually doing really well. And then for yield, like man, whoever can crack like a really good consumer neobank where someone can get like 5 to 10% APY on whatever they have in there, and like they have a good answer for regulatory obstacles, like you'll make so much money, it's insane. Whoever can do that, yeah, you'll be in a really good spot. Anyway, so I sorry, I hope that's helpful. A little bit of philosophy, and then maybe something that's a little more tangible.
All right, there you go. No, yeah, that was a great actually. Yeah, that was a great answer actually. And then Shimas has the last one here.
Cool.
Last one. A lot of our builders here, as you know, are young, come from university, or that age, and a lot of times they ask themselves, "Oh, someone already did that, or there's already a huge player. I'm not gonna do that." And you worked at Believe, and you guys thought different. Okay, we know the pump fund is there, but we're gonna do different. what could you say to our gladiators here that will be fighting against like huge guys like you guys did with Pump Fun? What would be your message to them on this sense?
Yeah, 100%. I guess I would say like don't discount your idea just because there's a really big player in the market. You know, like even though these players are, you know, they might be really big, they might already have like brand and like distribution and mind share. Like if there's something about the product or the experience that you personally see as like being too encumbering or you think could be better or more improved in a certain way, like follow that down, you know, to its end result and see if like there's a way that you can angle that perspective in a way that like the really big like incumbent could not, you know, tackle that problem with the same way. So like as an example, you know, I've seen a few different launch pads who have employed mechanisms other than just like a pure bonding curve style launch, right? I've seen one launch pad that has had a ton of success in China, actually, which is really funny. It's Rise. Rise has done really, really well with meme coins in the China region. And what they did is they have this elastic supply. So they're able to basically consistently raise floor prices for tokens. And that's using like a novel technology mechanism, right? And I think that they hit like top 5 revenue generating protocols, you know, like a few weeks ago. Like they've done exceedingly well. And I think that like very few people would have taken a look at the space and like seen Pump Fun and seen Bonk and like, you know, see how those competitors played out and decided to take a stab at it. But it's like you can make a lot of money and be really successful even if you have something that is just like a little different. If you can just steal a little bit of mind share, or if you can create you know, an experience in such a way that like the bigger platforms or incumbents like literally can't do the same without cannibalizing their business, like it's very possible, you know, like it's really possible. And I would say that definitely don't discount your intuition or ideas for something just because there's a bigger player. Like throughout the entire history of like humanity and capitalism, like we've seen these David and Goliath stories, you know, like it's biblical for a reason because like it does happen. So I would say that. And then I would also caveat that with like, you know, don't expect to compete if you're not doing anything novel, right? Like if I don't know, if for some reason your thesis was like, I'm just going to create, you know, like a Pump Fun V2, like, you know, I guess don't expect to find any success there. But yeah, I think that like the one thing, if I could like really impart it and take it away, is like, I think building something on your own is, it's like it is a decision that requires a lot of courage because you're just venturing into this land of uncertainty. And I think that, you know, there are obviously going to be times where like it's really brutal and you're going to be questioning yourself and you're going to have lots of doubt, but ultimately I would say like really trust your intuition, like question your assumptions, but like ultimately trust yourself, trust that you'll be able to figure that out. And you know, all of the winners who have these success cases are really just people who kept going and like didn't give up. Like they were really just stubborn, you know? And so I don't know, I think that that's actually more beneficial, like getting in the arena and just like trying and just, you know, refusing to give up past a certain degree. Like I would say that kind of courage is in much shorter supply than like some genius who's going to be able to like think through steps 1 through 40 every step of the way. So that's sort of what I would say on that.
Vou falar. All right, no, thank you so much, Taylor. Taylor, so we're gonna finish the transmission, but can you stay 2 minutes? We're gonna take a picture with you and everybody.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. And thank you so much for the tips. I think it was a great talk and it's gonna be very helpful.
It was amazing, Taylor.
Abre a câmera lá. All right.
Everyone's
All
here.
right.
Everyone's here with you.
We just took the picture, but we had to. But we just took the picture.
Okay.
We had to remove the camera due to all the noise. But
Okay.
but we have been here, our dog.
Oh, let's
And
go.
we just took the picture.
Let's go.
But yeah, Taylor, thank you so much for your time and for your help. It was great. And yeah, see you in Miami next week. And let's rock.
Let's go. It was a pleasure being here. And then the other thing I would say is like, feel free to give my Telegram out to any of the builders. I'm happy to chat with anyone about, you know, ways that I or the foundation can help. And yeah, really appreciate your time, guys.
We'll do that. Just be careful. We might get a lot of messages.
That's okay.
All right. Have a good night, Taylor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.